everyone, and welcome to the Burgess podcast, the show where we are opening up conversations about life at sea, discussing hot topics within the industry, as well as offering mental health support and promoting well-being for crew. We also have our very own in-house recruitment team, so if you or anyone you know is currently looking for a new position, please send your updated CV to recruitment@burgessyachts.com or check out our recruitment posts on Instagram @Burgess Yacht Crew. Welcome back to our series with the Burgess Blue Oceans team. Today we are talking reduce, reuse, refill and recycle. So despite our familiarity with the 4 R's and the fact that zero waste trends seem to be advancing at lightning speed, waste is still a huge problem around the world and one that continues to grow exponentially. Michela, how do we look at wastage? Can you reduce it by buying smart? Can you buy in bulk?
Yes, we've touched on some of this in the previous podcast. The first step must be trying to reduce waste. So can you refuse the packaging? You go into the supermarket, of course you take your own bag and you refuse the plastic bag they're offering you. But can you refuse some of the packaging from suppliers? If you continue to say no, they might start, not offering it in the first place. So it's try to, create that change. Food waste, we all waste a lot of food, and on yachts is you can't run out of anything, and therefore it's only normal that a lot of it is overstocked. But just try and sort of look at what your waste is, what is the source of the waste that you create on board, and try and reduce it in the first place. That is definitely the first step. Take the time to just think about it. Where does it come from, and can we reduce it?
So if we do have excess items at the end of the season, at the end of a charter, what happens to those items? Can we donate them, or are they all just disposed of?
I mean, ideally, can it be reused? Don't throw it away if it can be reused. It can, if it's still usable, then try and find a way to continue to use the same item, which in yachting I understand sometimes is not the first thought, just get a new one. But, a lot of items that end up being thrown away are probably still usable outside yachting. So, look at potentially donating it to charity, old uniforms, old linen, towels, anything that is just not quite to super yacht standard anymore, but for the average person ashore is perfectly good condition. There's charity shops, there's charities that might be able to take those items and just use them somewhere else, if not on board.
I wonder, I have no idea, literally no idea, but I see another opportunity here. I wonder if there are in some of the big Med and other yachting locations, Lauderdale, Florida, Palma, Mallorca, south of France, whether there are initiatives to enable yachts to donate at the end of the seasons when they're sort of winding down and going to do their winter yard periods or what have you. If there are the equivalent of suppliers, receivers, who will take that stuff and distribute it in local communities where it will be gratefully received. I don't know, but it's perhaps something we should look into. It's perhaps other crew moving ashore may want to think about doing. The other big one that we won't be able to cover in any depth now, but is worth thinking about is, what happens to stuff during those refits as well. When we talk about recycling and reusing and waste, we automatically jump to the way we live on a daily basis. What do we do with our food, carrying out the plastic packaging, putting it in the right container and so on and so forth. But actually there's the big question of refits and yard periods and kit that comes off boats there as well. And again, conversations with the yards about what happens to that is a big one that perhaps we as Burgess should start having that conversation and talking about it quite openly as well, because we all know how refits go. But I think from a crew perspective, and Alex, please chime in here, one of the biggest challenges must be, we know crew are all doing their bit. You're on boats surrounded by the ocean. You're very conscious of what's going into that water. You sort everything, you sift it, and then...
Exactly. Absolutely. I mean, it's very upsetting when you're taking guests swimming ashore and you're looking at turtles and suddenly a supermarket bag is floating past. It's a sad thing to see, and you see it more and more. But yeah, I mean, regardless of the refit waste, that's certainly another sort of topic to discuss. But the day-to-day side of things, yeah, obviously we've got strict rules and how you recycle waste and where you put it and what you should and shouldn't do with it. But essentially it all ends up shoreside, and the biggest thing for us is storing it appropriately, but then discharging it and handing it over and to facilities that aren't necessarily that well equipped. Some are, some you visit that have got amazing reception facilities, and you know that it's going in the right place, which is quite nice to see. But you get to some ports where everything's bagged up and chucked in a landfill around the corner, and that's the end of it. So yeah, sometimes in yachting you're kind of limited to what you can do. It's definitely in the immediate term, it's the separation, and if you can reuse, you can, but more often than not, it's tricky, and so you just have to hope that where you're discharging it, it's or getting rid of it, it's going somewhere that's going to be treated properly, I suppose.
So, do marinas have the facilities available for yachts to recycle?
That's, I mean, a good question. Yes and no. I mean, many do, and a lot of yachts have to comply and say that they've discharged or sent waste ashore in an appropriate way, etc., etc. But more often than not, you'll end up in a marina somewhere or port somewhere that just doesn't have the facilities. So you separate it, and then it all goes in one bin, which is very frustrating, and something that I think spoken about before. It'd be good to keep a record or log of the marinas and ports that don't do that, and try and feed it back up the chain, back to the management company. I know Burgess, when I was working on Burgess Managed Yachts, always very receptive at taking back feedback, which then in turn goes on to flag states, or indeed crew can report direct to flag states. So yeah, it's mixed. I mean, you're seeing more and more of it, particularly the new marinas. They're selling themselves and of being a nice facility to get guests, for crew to unwind, and they have good reception facilities for recycling. But from my memory, it's still very much hit and miss sometimes, unfortunately.
This is something, Michela, you were telling us about a while ago, isn't it? There is sort of that we've got a sort of two-speed thing, because you can report inadequate port reception facilities, but does it really cover the day-to-day things like recycling?
So yeah, there are a number of problems. The first and very simple one that I can see, obviously different marinas are in different countries. The way they recycle and segregate the recycling will be different. I mean, even in London, one borough has got different sort of recycling rules from another. If you go, from a country to another all the time, it will always be a challenge. If possible, some yachts spend a lot of time in, just a handful of marinas. It might be worth looking at, making a few notes and just trying to be ready for their marina and how they expect to receive their recycling. Then, of course, some marinas will not have any sort of recycling facilities, and some might not even have any type of adequate reception for any waste. And in those cases, it's worth knowing that inadequate port reception facilities can be reported to the IMO via the flag administration. So there is an MEPC, there is a form that can be filled in by the crew. We've got a fillable version on Burgess Managed fleet documents for Burgess Managed Yachts. And it can just simply be sent on, with the few details of what was not acceptable about that specific reception facility. And the flag administration must report it to the IMO and their database, and then discuss the issues with the port authorities of that specific port and come up with a solution. It is, of course, a very long-winded and a bit complicated process. The problem is that no one is really using it at the moment. But if we don't make the effort, then, it's very difficult to create change. There are, of course, cases where it's not quite up to scratch, but it's not something that can really be reported in that way. Well, in those cases, I think at the very least, just say something to the marina, to the management, and just say, this is really not, what it should be like. We're paying to be in this marina, and you're not providing the service that you should be providing. And, if you say it once and then the next yacht say it again, then, hopefully the message will be delivered. And, if possible, just try and avoid those marinas that don't provide a service that is of an appropriate standard.
As an industry, we're constantly striving for the best in everything. The best service, the best products, the best technology, whatever best means in each case. There isn't, and I really don't know. Is there a standard of marinas? Like beaches around the Med or beaches in the UK, whatever it is, have a flag system that denotes cleanliness and standards. Is there a standard for marinas, or is it something that our industry should be looking to create and push for as a whole? Collective pressure from yachts, from those working on yachts, from the management houses, from the brokers, from the charter businesses. That's a lot of pressure that could be brought to bear.
I think you're right. I'm not aware of one other than when you research marina, it might sell itself by saying we provide X, Y, and Z. However, the newer marinas that are opening up, both sort of stateside, Caribbean, Mediterranean, etc., they really are trying to sell themselves on every level. And there's a big chain of marinas that operate in the Caribbean, St. Martin, St. Thomas, etc., that have tuned in to what the super yacht needs are and really sell that. So they say, look, come to us because we will provide a 5-star service for your guests coming on board. Great. Also a good place for crew to unwind, to relax. Fantastic. We also provide these services for yachts to discharge and to throw away. So I think they're self-promoting. They're sort of establishing a criteria or a benchmark, which is great to see, which then might result in yachts saying, okay, well, we'll always go and pick up because we know it's safe. We know we can do a pick up and drop off here, and we know that we can do a quick turnaround, and they will assist us when we're putting things on the shore. They'll sort it out for us, etc. As opposed to going to those marinas that are perhaps slightly cheaper, but are tricky or don't offer that. And then over time, perhaps the marinas that don't offer anything will say, okay, well, we need to step our game up slightly because we're not seeing the business that we used to. So although there's no system, as you mentioned, as far as I'm aware, it's starting to happen. I think the pressure's being put on themselves, and then a new marina will pop up, and they would try and outdo the other company, or etc. So I think it's a self-pressuring system.
Yeah, awareness is so high that no one starting up now is going to do anything, you'd hope, other than make sure the credentials and facilities are first class.
Indeed.
Dare I ask, is it something we want to hear about? Is it something that we could take on board? Michela, you're working from an environmental perspective with all the yachts in the management fleet. Is it something that we could create or collect feedback from on Burgess Manage?
It's certainly something that as a company we can help with, because when charter managers and charter brokers put together itineraries, if the yachts have told us that their marina is to avoid, then we can make sure that is the case. And then if the marina doesn't get any business, they'll soon change what they're doing. So it takes collaboration.
Perhaps it's something we can sort of collate and feedback. Some of it will just be anecdotal. Most of it will be anecdotal, won't it? But it all counts.
It all counts, and this is exactly the sort of thing where in order to help, we need the help from the crew that do go and to these marinas, and we need to know what they find and what they see in order for us to feed back to others. We're not there with them, and their help in these cases are really quite crucial for us to then be able to help them in return.
As a yacht management company, can we put any pressure on the marinas to up their game with recycling, or is that not our role?
We were just we were skirting around it, really, weren't we? If we get the feedback in, and the guys and the girls are out visiting yachts and marinas, so we'll see, but we learn best from the people who are living it daily on board. If we get that feedback in, then it would be remiss of us not to do something with it, and in a nice way, feed that information back and say, look, we have had several comments over the course of this summer that actually crew would love to see X, Y, and Z, and we probably need to be quite specific, but we should. If we get that information, we absolutely should, and it would be great to hear more about it.
I think one thing that might be worth mentioning is also that, of course, in an ideal world, all marinas would be able to offer this service to the greatest standard. Of course, we need to also understand that a small island, they will never have the same level of recycling facilities. In the Med, it's not something we should see. But then if you're on a remote small island, maybe in those cases, if at all possible, and if the yacht does have the space, is to just try and keep their garbage on board and, land it in the next marina where there are better facilities. Just because if it's a tiny island, if they haven't got the facilities, yes, we can ask them to, provide these facilities, but they might actually not be able to. And so where is that waste actually going to end up?
And I guess it points back to what you said earlier, Georgina, that if we can collect that data, then it will allow the yachts to plan better. Because at the moment, I guess they don't know until they get there. But if we have that information ready for them that they can access, would that allow them to plan their recycling?
It will all come down to what Alex is about to tell us as well, in terms of what facilities they have on board, the technology on board. Is there an opportunity for another budding ex-crew entrepreneur to provide better technology? When do you crush the glass, Alex?
Yeah, quite. I mean, it's all very, very valid points, and yeah, information about realistic reception facilities on smaller islands would be very useful to have, because on charter, it was all about planning. If you do have a long charter, you know that you're going to be accumulating a large amount of waste. The separation is so important. So you're not mixing food with other items. You need to sometimes, on some yachts, keep garbage in the forepeak or somewhere essentially outside. And if it gets hot and gets warm and starts to break down, it's not pleasant. And some yachts might only have small garbage fridges and refrigerators. So if you're well equipped on board, it's fine. You can go for a long period of time. You can compact, crush, and store and make things much easier to handle. So when you go to a small island, you can say, "Let's tell you what, just take the food only," because that will biodegrade and they can deal with it, as opposed to giving them huge numbers of plastic cartons, etc., etc. And on that, sort of moral sense, you're going to an island that perhaps, and I've certainly been to them, have a luxury complex or resort that's attached to the small island, and they'll say, "Yep, come on in, we can supply your power, we can take your garbage, we can do this, that, and the other." But it's still a small island. You think, okay, very well, we've given that all to you, and you've taken how many cubic meters of waste, but where does that actually go? You're just going to brush it to one side, perhaps, or it's going to go onto a container that goes to the mainland somewhere, and how well is that dealt with? So you think, fantastic, thank you for receiving all of this, but be honest, what's going to happen? So you can say, it doesn't matter, we can compact everything, and we'll just give you the bare minimum to free up a bit of space, and then we will, when we go to a mainland marina, discharge. But it's hard, and I think then it really does come down to the garbage management system on board, and then the facilities that you've got. So some of the older yachts might not have compactor bins or glass crushers, and to retrofit those is very tricky. Glass crushers incredibly noisy, so it's again looking to perhaps other manufacturers out there who can say, what, I can design this that will fly off the shelves if it works, because it's an ongoing problem, the storage of that stuff. So I think, put it back. Georgina said, put it back to the crew to try and come up with something. We're relying on the crew a lot to be incredibly inventive and change everything, but it really may come to that.
I think it's the crew that understand the problems best, but there is so much technology out there. I mean, there must be other technology out there in other industries that is used, and just because this is such a niche industry, is it just not being adapted? I mean, I'm guessing that we've talked a lot about glass crushing in the run up to this conversation, and unless you're in a padded room, inside a padded room, I don't know how you crush glass easily and noiselessly. But for other types of garbage compacting, that can be done. Is it fitted as standard on yachts, or is it?
It certainly, I mean, some of the newer yachts, yes, of course, and some of the retrofitted compacted bins I've seen are, because they're retrofitted, they're not quite as big, they're squeezing in. People think, well, actually, they're not actually that good, they're not reliable, so they're just used as a bin, or they're not, it really has to work, and that's a silly thing to say, but it's got to work well. And so if, classically, with a retrofit something or an afterthought, it's never quite as good as if it was originally built. So yeah, modern yachts will have this. Some of the older yachts won't, and then that's where they struggle.
The super yacht norm at the moment, when it comes to this whole question, is almost perfectly imperfect, and it probably is with a lot of things. It's technology that's been pulled across from other sectors, that could be done so much better if taken at the outset from a super yacht perspective, I guess. It's like the age-old question of designing a boat in terms of who wins. Did the designers beat the engineer in terms of who gets the most space?
Exactly. And you're right, and it comes from the brief. And I think, though, that with time, enough people saying this isn't working, we need this, changes happen. People will start to listen. And I think with modern yachts now that it's certainly the case. So it's, I think, going the right direction, but it's can be slow and a bit tricky at times.
And I think we've mentioned in a previous podcast, there are crew already doing a lot. So, they may have some guidance for us that we can, pass on to other yachts.
For sure, and safety meetings. I've held many, and crew are very proactive, and they want to feed things back. They want to change the environment they're living in, and so that doing a huge amount. And in any crew, I would say, do report it, do feed it back. I worked on Burgess managed yachts for 9 or 10 years, and one of the things I like about Burgess, not trying to plug Burgess too much, is that they always did listen. So feel free to either via your head of department or reach out directly and say, look, I really want to make a change here or there, or want to stop this from happening. Open ears, communicate, very much in favour of that, and Burgess is very pro listening. So encourage all ideas and communication.
In our safety meeting minutes that we receive from the yachts, crew on our managed yachts will know we have a section on environmental initiatives on board. And the thing that we see the most is the effort that the crew is putting in recycle as much as they can. That is the thing that we hear the most. So we really want to help them. And as we talked about, there is only so much that they can do on board. Again, for us to help them, we need to hear what their problems are, particularly if they're problems that they find ashore. That's where hopefully we can help.
Well, I think there's a lot there to think about. So over to you guys who are listening. If you have any feedback on recycling equipment, marina facilities, and any advice that you want to share, then do get in touch with us at Burgess Yacht Crew. And speak to you next time.